Good evening, parents and guardians. Good evening. Welcome to today's parent workshop. My name is Johnson Liu with TUSD, and I'm here to announce that this workshop has live language interpretation in Japanese, Korean, and Spanish. Live oral interpretation works on most Windows, Mac OS, Android, and iOS devices. So look in your Zoom toolbar for the globe icon and click on that globe icon and select the language. Now you will hear the language interpreter at a higher volume level and the presenter at a lower volume level. Now, if you do not need any language interpretation, then you don't need to do anything. Also note that this session is being recorded. We have with us today Dr. Sheila Reamer and Mrs. Heather Nakasuji as our presenters. And to start us off, let's welcome Mrs. Kara Heinrich.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kara Heinrich. I'm from Torrance Unified School District as well. And we are excited to have you with us this evening to conclude our three-part series with our workshops, our distance learning platform workshops. And this series tonight, we will include both visual and performing arts, which is music and art tonight, and then also universal concepts. So we look forward to being with you this evening. So welcome up, Dr. Reamer. Go ahead and start us off.
Thank you, Kara. I appreciate it. Well, first off, thank you all for showing up. This is wonderful, an opportunity to celebrate the music and art and universal concepts that are available in our distance learning platform. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the beginning of my presentation. And this is looking at the four areas or steps for the process that we go through to share the arts for art and music for the distance learning platform. When your students experience it, they'll go through the respond first, and that's where they get to respond to a piece of art or music, and they'll respond in the way that they see or hear it. And then we have the learn about it, where they learn about a musical or artistic concept, and then they also get the chance to meet the musician or the artist behind the scenes. And then next is the connect. And with the connect, they connect the concept that they learned to their life or to some practical experience. And then lastly, to show off everything that they learned, they get the chance to create or perform. And that's where they have a choice board. So what I'm going to do is go through each one of these to give you a little bit more of an in-depth view of what it looks like. So first off, our respond. So this is what respond looks like on the weekly planner. There'll be an opportunity for your child to listen to a musical piece. This one happens to be Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and they're learning about rounds and call and response. So they'll get the chance to listen. And then if you'll notice on the left side, there will be 3 questions. We call these the music thinking strategy questions. And they give the chance for the student to respond to the music that they're listening to. So there's usually one general question, what do you notice? And you'll notice that a lot in our distance learning platform to get an open response to their thinking process. This one specifically is how they are alike and different. So they'll kind of compare them. And then like, what do you hear that makes you say that? So that's their first observation. And then what more can you find? And that's an opportunity to listen again. So we want them to definitely listen more than once. So the fun part about these, as you see on here, is it says discuss it with your family. You can talk to your children about them. So this is a TK2 example of music. Now you see a 3 through 5 example of art. So the students have an art piece that they're looking at. Again, they're questions, but these are visual thinking strategies. So this is basically what you're seeing. So the question, like, how do we know that the people in the front are closer to us than the people in the background? So they look at their the piece and then they make their observations. And then again, what do you see that makes you say that? And what more can you find? So they can explore a little bit deeper and of course have this wonderful discussion with you. Now, this discussion leads to their notebook. And this is what it will look like inside their universal concept and arts notebook. This top one is for the arts, and then the bottom one is for the music. So again, the same questions are there, and then they have the opportunity to type in their responses. So this is a great way to record their thinking, and also a wonderful way for them to work on their vocabulary for art and music. Now, the wonderful thing about that, and sorry, let me go back one more time, with this and working with it is the idea that there is no wrong answer. So whatever wonderful responses or things that they're thinking about, honor them. Now, I have some tips for this. So while kids are responding, if you notice on the left for the art, try placing your notebook in the present mode so you can see the images much better, so they can get all those little fine details. So I have the little hint there for the present mode. You can see where that looks there. And then for music, always make space for movement, because they'll be moving around, and also maybe a quiet area for listening so they can really hear the pieces. If you don't have a quiet area, you can always use earbuds, and that might help out. And then, as I mentioned earlier, be open for the discussion, and there's no wrong answers. So this is just a fun time to respond and enjoy the music or enjoy the artwork. Okay, our next one is learn about it. So now we're going to go deeper, the next layer down. So for learn about it, they're going to be learning about a concept, and it's linked to the universal concept that we have for each one of our modules. Heather's going to tell you more about the universal concept, but for now, the one that I'm highlighting is the one on power, and that's our universal concept for Module 5. So here's our question. What power do artists use to make their pictures seem three-dimensional? So the students are exploring that question as they're learning about space in art. And then, as you notice right here on the right, there are a series of videos that students will get the chance to look at. And then we have charts with labels, and then the vocabulary. And then the next layer that we'll go through, again, remember where it said, seeing the artist behind the wonderful artwork. So this one happens to highlight Winslow Homer. So students have the opportunity to learn about the time period when he was born, a little about his life. And in this particular one, there is a video that shows the story behind his artwork. So this is an art example. Now, here's a music example. This one is talking about form. So listening to music, having students realize that everything doesn't quite sound exactly the same. If you listen very closely, you'll notice there's some subtle differences. And then you notice there's an A, B, A, so it repeats. Students are introduced to this through a video. And then, as with the art, they have the opportunity to meet a musician. So this one happens to be Pharrell Williams, who's famous for the song Happy. So they get the chance to learn a little bit about his life. As I mentioned before, it's really important for them to see the artist or the musician behind the wonderful masterpieces that are being created. And if you notice here on his little mini bio, like he started by tapping rhythms on his desk. So who knows, you might have a budding musician right there in your home. So some tips for learn about it. One of them, as you notice, we use a lot of videos. So be patient when you're clicking the videos. So give it a few seconds, don't panic and say, oh no, it's not working. It just needs a little time. So be patient for that. And then if you can, it would be helpful too to play the videos in full screen. Some of them, again, feature art pieces. So they might be able to see the fine detail if it's in full screen. And then even for the music pieces, there is some notation. So being able to see those notes in full screen will be much better for the students. I've also highlighted the closed captioning. You can see that with the yellow star. And that's an opportunity to enhance understanding. So maybe something they didn't hear, they can actually read. And it's also available in different languages. So that's learn about it. Next, we have connect. We don't want students to just learn concepts, but maybe connect it to their life or an experience. So I'm going to stop, not stop sharing, so I'm going to exit because Connect involves a lot of interactive movement. Well, not interactive movement, but I said, yeah, it is movement, but a lot of interaction on the screen. So I remember the one I was telling you about space. In this particular one, the students have the opportunity to actually move this frame. So they can move it up and show more of the background. They could move it down, show a little bit of less of it. And they're actually kind of framing the artwork here. This happens to be a wonderful photograph for them to experience. And then after they do that, they can express their understanding. So did I change it to show more of the foreground, the middle ground, or the background? So that's one way for them to connect for the art. Here's one more art example. This is the coziness of a home life. So they can move the objects around in here. So we're talking about the concept of near and far. Artists will put the larger items forward so they can actually move this little vase of flowers. And they say, oh, hey, there's a large table. I'm going to put that large table here. And then they can move the little small flowers back there. And they might notice the small little table. So they can manipulate this and move it around. So an opportunity to show their understanding of that concept. And then the opportunity to travel. How often do we get the chance to go to the mountains? Well, you do on the distance learning platform, okay, in art. So again, they get the chance to show their understanding of space, of near and far. So like the larger trees go in the front, smaller trees in the back. Then we have the larger vehicles. They can kind of move those around and they can play around with overlapping, move that one back there. But it's an opportunity for them to experiment and explore. So those are some art examples for Connect. For music, this is an example of them freely moving to a piece. Remember I told you about Happy? Okay, this is the Pharrell Williams piece. So they get the chance to see an American Sign Language group performing it. And then I gave them some suggestions for how they might want to move so they can do that. And then afterwards, this was an example of them, again, experimenting with form and, form and music. So they get the chance to be an arranger. They can actually move these around and change how they want to arrange it and then actually perform it. So some tips for Connect. And we move back into our present mode so you can see it better. There we are. Okay, so as you saw, the Connect is very interactive on the digital screen. So it would be helpful for you to help them to move things around. So I would say like hold, move, release. So that's a way to kind of hold on to the object, slightly move it, and then release the button. And then my favorite saving grace for all of this is the undo button. So if they move something that they don't want it to be there, the undo will return it to its original place. And then a great tip for Connect, also commend all their creations as they're working through things, and then even encourage them to perform them before you, and then even try some out for yourself. It might be fun. Okay, our last one, create and perform. So after they've gone through the other 3 steps, now is the opportunity to show what they've learned. So this is an example for art on the, music on the left and art on the right. And then on here, this is the choice board. They can do an innovation of something they already did before. There might be a video that they could perform to, a chance to go a little bit further. Like this is the one for the body percussion, or I always leave it open for them to create their own understanding of it. And same for art. These videos will show them how to do their the creations that they want to work on. And then there will be some attachments like PDFs that will show some student work and step-by-steps that they can read. And then also, of course, the opportunity to create their own understanding. Okay, and then this is important too. Once they've done it, they have to be able to turn it into their teacher. So on the right, we have the turn-in directions. For the teacher, there's a video that shows them how they can turn it in, and then they can also take a picture of it and just put it on the following blank slide to the instructions. And then there's also the opportunity to participate in our TUSD gallery, and we have one for TK2 and 3rd through 5th. And then there's also a place, you notice where it says here, where you can click that, and that'll be the holding place where everything is turned in until it goes into the gallery. So let's explore the gallery. I'm going to exit and go over to a student notebook. And first off, let me show you the place where you can turn it in. Okay, so you will see some folders. There's one for each grade level, and some artwork kind of ends up outside of the grade level of the folders, but it's okay, no worries. But we have all of these here, and this is where you can turn in the artwork. Okay, now I'm going to go over here again so you can see the galleries. So the gallery features are art and music, and it also features the wonderful universal concepts that students are doing for the distance learning platform. And again, Heather will be sharing that with you. But let's take a quick peek in the TK2 gallery. And I must say, your students are so talented, your children. It's amazing. It blows me away. And when I was putting everything inside the gallery and I looked at it, I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It looks like an amazing gallery. So let's see if this is loading. It's taking a minute. Now it's being slow. Oh, okay. Slide by slide, it's loading. All right, come on. Okay, if that one's going to take forever, I think I have one that's loaded. Hopefully this one, oh, perfect. This is better. Okay, so here we are. So we're going to enter the gallery. I'm just going to show you a few pieces. And hopefully it will load quickly. There we are. Okay. And I think it's still loading. Okay, we're getting close. Thanks for your patience. Ah, there we are. We're inside. Ah, okay, let me go back to the lobby. Just a moment. There we are. Okay, so in the lobby, you will notice that all the exhibits are listed. So let's see. Okay, and I think, oh, there it is. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so we have our Kandinsky exhibits. The ones where it says relationships and patterns, those are exhibits for the universal concept. And then you can just take the walking tour and explore. So I'm just going to quickly click on our abstract art one, and you can see some of the student work. It's so beautiful. There's more of it there. And you can click through the rooms. This is our texture exhibit. And then this is the more of the texture exhibit. But you can see all the wonderful work. They have done such a wonderful job. I'm so very proud of their efforts. Okay, so that's our TK2 exhibit. I'm going to exit that one. And I don't want to take a risk in our 3 through 5 not loading, so don't worry about that one right now. But I'm going to go back to our, let's see if I can move this over. Okay, there it is. Okay, now we're back here again. Okay, so that is our exhibit. So some tips for that I wanted to share with you. For the art, I know we might not have all of the wonderful supplies at hand. You might not have watercolors and different things like that, but you can use some household materials. Food coloring works, Kool-Aid, that works great if you want to try that. And then also a lot of the projects, I try to limit them to like maybe ones where you would use colored pencils, crayons, or markers. So try to make it accessible for you. And then if you don't want to spend a lot of money, Dollar Tree works great. The little brushes will work fine if you wanted to try that out. And then also, once you have submitted your work, it would be great to take pictures of them in good lighting. So if you do want them to go into our art gallery, then we'll be able to have them really show up wonderfully. And then for music, a tip for that one, again, make space for movement and provide that quiet area. You might not have the instruments at home, but any household materials will work: pots, pans, spatulas, forks, spoons, anything. Try it out. It'd be great for our rhythm. And then another thing too, some of the students do submit things, and they get a little nervous, but if they perform for you, in front of the family first, that would be great. And then even if you want to perform with them too, that would be wonderful. So that basically concludes the art and the music. So what I wanted to do was to open it up to see if there were any questions or things that you would like to share. So I'm going to turn this over to our wonderful moderator, Johnson, and we can take it from there.
Thank you, Dr. Reamer. Parents, if you have any questions or comments, please utilize the chat. You may type in Japanese or in Korean or in Spanish, and obviously in English, and our translators will be able to pick that up. But if you have any questions for Dr. Reamer, especially about her presentation that she just delivered, please let us know through the chat, and we can open up for some Q&A for some question and answering. And if not, Mrs. Heather Nakasuji can stroll right on into universal concepts, and the chat will continue to be open for everybody to drop questions or comments.
All right.
So Dr. Reamer, I do not see any questions or comments as of yet.
No problem.
Okay.
Great. And then while we're waiting, oh, that's so wonderful from you, Diana. Thank you. I have to tell you though, I want to thank you for all of your work you've done as parents. This is like a wonderful opportunity to have art and music for our kids. So I want to thank you for all of your efforts, for all of your support. You are amazing. And please keep art and music alive for your children and all the kids for TUSD.
All right. All right. So thank you so much, Sheila. My name is Heather Nakasuji, and I am the Gate Resource Teacher for the district. And I also have had the opportunity to work on the social science and the universal concept content for the distance learning platform. So I'm happy to be with you here today with you. So thank you for stopping by. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And all right, are you saying universal concepts? Fantastic. Okay, so yes, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about universal concepts, and just to give you some of the context and the purpose behind the concepts and why they're even there. And then also to kind of highlight a few of the activities that your students are seeing through these universal concept notebooks. And then opportunities for you as a parent to help support and extend, and also get your kid to share some of their great ideas with others as well. So that's what we're going to do today. So where do we find these things, first of all? Like Dr. Reamer mentioned, they are located in our Google Classroom. And these specific notebooks are organized under modules. So if you look at the topic, it'll say module 1 through 6, and then the name of the concept for that module. And under each module, as the weeks progress, there's going to be 3 different notebooks, right? And each of those notebooks represents 2 weeks. And we did that because we didn't want to have 12 different notebooks for your child to have to navigate through. But because we combined the music, art, and universal concepts in 2-week notebooks, some of those slide decks are going to be a little bit longer. So just one tip for navigation would be to check out slide number 2 in every notebook. And in slide number 2, there's a table of contents. And there's links in there to different slides for each section. And so if you click on these links here, it'll skip down to the section that they need instead of having to scroll through all of the different slides. And then on most of the slides in the corner in the right-hand corner, there's a little house icon. And if you click on that, it'll navigate you back to the table of contents as well. So that's just a little tip, so you don't have to keep scrolling. All right. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of the context and the why behind all of this. So if you look at this picture, it reminds me a little bit of how my house is right now. But also, it reminds us that of this idea that when things are very chaotic, right, and things are in chaos and there's no organization, it's really hard to kind of locate things, to access things, to make sense of anything. However, when we seek patterns, right, or we categorize things, or we organize them in meaningful ways for ourselves, then we can find things, we can access information, and it makes a lot more sense to us, right? And we remember things and there's meaning to it. So our brains work a little bit like this in a way, right? And so our students every day are kind of, sometimes they can be overwhelmed by all the information that they're getting, right? There's so much they're learning and all the different contents. And this can sometimes be very overwhelming, and it also can seem disconnected at times. And so that's where universal concepts come in. These are some examples of those concepts. They are not the only ones, but they are the ones we're focusing on for our platform right now. So the ideas of change, patterns, relationships, systems, power, force, and influence. So these ideas are, they're overarching ideas that help students understand how to organize information in logical mental structures. And they're ideas that help us make meaning for ourselves and connections between all that we learn. So it's kind of like the cognitive glue, right? The connecting ideas that bring all of the details and the facts and the ideas together and holds them together in a meaningful way. And they're called universal because they're just that. They are universal and they cross, it doesn't matter what culture or time period or content or subject that you're studying, change is everywhere. We see patterns in all different realms of life. There's relationships to everything, right? And in all things, and so on. So these ideas are just help our kids create more meaning for themselves and get them to see a little bit about the big picture. So what does that feel like, right? We're going to do a little activity real quick just to see how this works a little bit. So if you look at the 4 pictures on the screen, right? Think about which of these universal concepts connects all of the pictures together. So all these pictures, are they connected because of change? Do they show patterns? Is it relationships, force or influence, power or system? Take a moment just to think. All right. So the beauty of all this is that there's no wrong answer, right? I could find a way that each of these pictures represents some sort of change, whether it's change in our environment, change in history, change in our political systems or beliefs, right? Change in the seasons. So all of these things could be connected by change, but I could also see where they're connected by relationships or power or systems or any of those. And that's what makes them very universal. So there is one, though, that I have in mind, and I'm going to show you a couple more pictures. So if you look at these, which universal concept do you think I'm trying to hint at? Anyone want to take a guess in the chat? So again, there's no right answer, and that's okay. But if you look at this, the one that I was trying to hint at was change, right? There's change in our lives as human beings, change in technology, change is represented in numbers, right? I could see this in lots of different ways. So by doing things like this and getting kids to understand that these ideas exist and they connect all the things and areas that we learn about can be very helpful. So once they understand that the concept itself, then they can start looking for more examples of where they see this idea happening in other realms of their life. For example, where do you see this in the books that you read, or the articles that you read, in the characters, right? Or the structure of it. Oops. Where do I see change happening in history, right? And the events and the people that we learn about. Where do we see change? How does change impact our numbers, right? And math in terms of number sense and place value, or how does changing something, one part of an equation, impact the rest of it, right? And in science, where do we see change? Do we see change in nature, in the reactions, chemical reactions, different forces, all those types of things? So this idea of change can be very powerful in getting kids to understand how things are connected, and also how getting them to think in more abstract ways. And it also can be then replaced by any other concept. So where do you see connections related to patterns in all of the different content areas? Or relationships, power, and so on. So it's a variable. It can be replaced by any one of these ideas, but it still gets kids to think about what they're learning in much deeper and more complex ways. So there's this quote from Byrne. He said that generalizations, big ideas, universal themes all help students move toward abstraction, higher order thinking, and making connections within and across topics. And this is the purpose of universal concepts. It's trying to get our kids to think in more abstract ways, which can be very tough, but I've seen it happen in beautiful ways, even as early as TK. And it can expand even beyond school too, when they go to college and in life, and thinking about systems and power and the ways that we can make things better. Right. So this is a strategy to help kids get to those ideas and to challenge them to think in new ways. So what does that look like in terms of what the kids are actually doing? So reflections are one of the ways that we get kids to stop and to think about how things are connected and to reflect on the concept. And so you'll see, your kids will see slides like this in their notebook. This particular slide is an example of just like a learning slide. There's nothing really for them to do on this one, but it's a really good jumping off point for discussion with the teacher, with you as a parent at home, and each other, right? So this one, you might get your kids to kind of first define what changes. Well, changes to become or make different, to transform, right? And then also get them to think about ways that change, the different levels of thinking about change, right? On a kind of surface level, we can think about change because we can experience it with our senses, what we see, hear, touch, taste, and feel. But then later on, as we learn more and more about it, then we can also start making judgments about change. So is change good or bad or both? Or what kinds of changes are good or bad or both? And then getting kids to see how these change they can find examples in their own lives, because they know a lot of this stuff already, but they don't always take the time to actually notice these things. But we see change in the way that we grow, and in nature, our feelings. And then where else can we find this change? Right. So the beauty and the meaning is really in the discussions about these things. There's also places like this slide to where kids will be able to record some of their ideas about these concepts. So this is a place for them to stop and think about what they learned in all the content areas and how it's connected to this bigger idea and how they're connected to each other. And your students they're welcome to write on this if they want to print it out and physically write on paper. They can draw their ideas, or you can type it for them especially if you have younger students, or they can just talk about them, right? But the idea is to spend a moment to kind of sit and to reflect on what they learned and how it's related. So the other thing is that kids are going to be at so many different levels about these concepts, depending on their grade level, depending on the individual, depending on the time of year, and that's okay. We're not expecting, like philosopher type ideas right away for all kids, and that's all right too. They might start off by just understanding that recognizing that these ideas exist in small doses, right? So for example, if they're studying about systems, a student might think, oh, the human body has systems that are made of parts that work together to help us live. And that's great. And if that's all they understand that there's a system that exists, fantastic. Later on, then we'll move them into thinking more about, okay, so we rely on many different systems. There's more than just one system. There's different kinds, like political, ecological, financial, educational, transportational, right? And these systems are often connected in some way, right? So starting to get a little bit bigger. But we also might have students who already have a good idea about and understanding of these concepts. So then a great thing to do to challenge them would be to get them to think about questions. What other questions does it generate for them? And how does this impact everything else? And what can they do about it, right? So maybe they're thinking about when parts of a system are flawed, there's an impact on many other systems. And why do some systems work better than others? And how can we improve and support a system? So not just understanding and identifying these things, but thinking about how can we make them better? How does this affect our lives and things like that? So again, why does this all matter? A lot of times people say, why should my kindergarten student care about systems and power and things like that? It's because our world that our kids are living in, there's so many different challenges right now that they're going to be facing and continue to face, and big problems that they're going to need to help solve. There's also going to be, right now, there's already lots of opportunities for innovation and big thinking, right, that they're going to want to engage in. And there's going to be moments where we're going to need big change makers. And so in thinking about all this, our world needs really big thinkers. So we need kids to be able to understand that patterns and change and relationships and systems and power exist, and so that they understand that they can figure out ways to actually help make them better in the future. And it's a balance between getting our kids to understand the stuff, but also seeing how it relates to the bigger picture and how they can use all of that information to come up with good solutions to big problems or creative ideas that are going to change the world. So that's why this matters. So where do you see that in the stuff that they actually do, right? Another part is in meaningful projects. So these are some examples of some of the projects that you might have already been seeing on the platform. Each one is kind of representative of a task where we ask students to think like an expert in the real world. So they're rooted in real world tasks or real world experiences. because we want them to mimic what experts do and to think like those big thinkers. And then there's also, other thing is there's also lots of choice in this. Similar to the concepts, there isn't one right way to do things, right? There's lots of different ways that kids can represent and show what they know. And so there's lots of choice in these opportunities for them to show what they know through art or through just speaking or presenting things or performance or using tech tools. So there's lots of different ways. And this is just the progression of kind of how those projects are rolled out. So it always starts over a 6-week module. It starts with an opening act where students are shown images that kind of help them understand and build their understanding about that abstract idea. And so those are great opportunities. Like Sheila mentioned earlier, we're just asking kids, what do you notice? What do you wonder? So it's very open-ended, and that'll help them build up to the idea. And then there's opportunities for the project to be introduced. So there's some directions where they discuss the task and try to kind of help them plan for completing that project. And if your kid wants to plan in the ways that they want to plan, that's okay too. But there are some examples of how a way you could try to get your kid to plan and to think through the time management piece. And then it always ends with the sharing and celebrating ideas. So there's some sort of gallery, virtual gallery, because we want kids to know that their ideas and their work matter. And we want them to learn from others and to celebrate those ideas by sharing them. This is just an example of some of the task directions. So, for example, it'll give the context for what they're going to be doing. For example, this one is the Unmuseum. So they're being asked to create an exhibit for this kind of funky museum where you can touch things and play with things and experience things and not just look at them. Then they're asked to choose a perspective. And by this, they're just being asked to see, like, do you want to show what you know about the concept from a history lens, from a scientific point of view, through writing, through a math lens, or maybe through like performance or dance or art, or you could choose your own. So this is just the opportunity to get kids to understand that these things occur in many different content, and a lot of times they're connected. So they can also come up with their own way of showing what they know. And then the last part is there's options for different tools that they can use to create those projects. So we encourage lots of different creative ways of producing things, using tech tools, using actual, materials that you have at home, but it also doesn't have to be anything super fancy, right? It can be something as simple as a drawing on a piece of paper. It's more about the thinking than the actual, the beauty of the piece, right? And then this is just an example of one of those virtual gallery slides where kids can add their piece. They can write a little bit here on the side about what they learned. And then they can add a picture, a video, or like a digital link to what they created here. And there's directions for how to do that as well that are linked in there. So we want to let imagination and thinking soar without sending everyone a crash course. So this is a point where I just wanted to remind parents that it's okay to take a breath and to not feel like every project has to be that trophy project. We are in a pandemic right now, and I think we all, as a parent, I completely understand. We're just trying to do the best that we can with what we got and the energy that we got and the time that we have and things like that. So don't feel like it has, even though it's a project, that it has to be this huge, elaborate piece, because it doesn't. I think that even if your kid doesn't even do the project, just having conversations around these ideas and having conversations with them to ask them how, what they're learning in math and science and social science and history and all those things are connected to each other, and giving it a bigger picture kind of idea with the universal concepts is really great, because student thinking and experience matters the most. We want more cognitive and creative sweat, not just more or more elaborate products. So don't feel like it has to be anything super fancy. It can be, if the kid really loves it and wants to take it, and wants to explore, fantastic, but it doesn't have to be. And then last, we wanted to kind of share a little bit, kind of like what Dr. Reamer did, and share a few things from the actual gallery. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a couple and highlight just a few, because we wanted to celebrate that work even in the space that we're in right now. So you can navigate through the lobby again by clicking on the links, and then it'll skip down to those things. Or you can just scroll down on the side. But one of the ones that I wanted to kind of highlight, these are the TK through 2 projects. But there's, let's see, where did we start? In here, there are so many fantastic pieces. This one is one that was done by a student who the concept was patterns, and they talked about the different patterns that they noticed from the ocean, right? And also too that they noticed the patterns in the waves and the numbers and counting, and they represented it in a piece of art, which I thought was really awesome. There's other ones that, kids will show the different patterns they see in their world or in what they're learning about. They did patterns in dance and in music. And then some kids, they showed what they knew by creating like Lego stop motion movie or something like that. And that's great, right? We can show our ideas in lots of different ways and in lots of different content. So those are some examples. There's so many that I don't even know which ones to highlight. But I love that they brought it back to what they experience as well. And that's really meaningful, because that's what they'll remember. Even in this one, they talked about this little girl. She talked about the relationship between, what happened when she rode her bike. And so it was that whole experience. And kids focused on their own families as well, which is fantastic. In the upper grades, some of the, so same concept, but they came up with even more deeper and complex ideas about it. This specific student, the concept was patterns. And she focused on patterns in world cities and what do people find, what do the people find important? And they looked at to see how the city was structured and the patterns in it, and to see what they actually valued and found important, which is fantastic. There's also ones, let's see, hold on. The student saw change in all the different parts of her life, which I thought was amazing. And this student, she talked about relationships and through dance, which I thought was awesome as well. So this is a great opportunity for kids to just think in different and new ways, and to make connections to what they're learning in meaningful ways, and to show it in ways that are personalized to them. And then I just wanted to kind of end similar to Dr. Reamer by saying thank you. Because we see, we hear, and we appreciate all that you have already done this whole year. and past year, and that you continue to do. We thank you for partnering with us because to support the kids, the people who matter the most, which are our kids. And we know that sometimes it can be very challenging, but we also appreciate all that you do. And we hope that we can continue to be a support for you. And so thank you. With that, if you have any questions, please feel free to add to the chat or let us know. And we're here to help. So thank you very much.